Everybody. And good morning and a very warm welcome to our final official council meeting for the 2019-2022 triennium. And if I could please ask everyone to stand for our opening karakia. Te tawa mai i runga, te tawa mai i raro, te tawa mai i roto, te tawa mai i waho, kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, honi e, hui e, tai ki e. We have apologies today from Councillor Tapani. He may try and join us online, but we will take apologies for now. And Deputy Mayor Brosnan. If I could have a mover and seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Crystal and Councillor Price. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Are there any conflicts of interest? So in our public forum today, I have the absolute pleasure of being able to say a thank you and a farewell to some key people that have been part of Council this triennium and who are departing us at the end of the triennium. So there is 3 people today, and that is John Pelleray, the Chair of our Audit and Risk Committee, and 2 of our councillors, Councillor Tanya Wright and Councillor Apiata Tapani, who have decided not to restand in the upcoming elections. So, as I said, I feel very honoured to be able to say a few words today and say thank you to the 3 of them. So first of the 3, I would like to thank is John Pelleray, who is here with his wife Louise today. And as I mentioned, John is the independent chair of our Audit and Risk Committee. John has been the chair of the committee since its inauguration in February 2015. And as a member of this committee, it has been my absolute pleasure to work alongside John for the past coming up 8 years. John's extensive knowledge in risk management, insurance and finance matters has enabled Council to navigate high-risk issues such as COVID and the November 2020 flood. During the first COVID lockdown, we drew extensively on John's time, calling him in on a regular basis, seeking feedback and guidance around COVID risk management and business continuity planning. John always took particular interest in our insurance negotiations, which was great because many of us aren't too keen on those, and his knowledge and experience in the insurance sector ensured Council was always well placed with its level of cover. Both councillors and officers have appreciated John's astute approach to finance and risk matters, and we wish both you, John, and Louise all the very best and hope you will now have more time to enjoy those overseas trips to family and friends. So once again, John, thank you for your outstanding commitment and service to Council. And we do have a small gift for you.
It's hard to believe it's 8 years, actually. Where's the time gone? It's hard to believe it's 8 years, and it seems to have gone in a flash, really. And I think back to where we started with the Audit and Risk Committee and you, Kirsten, and Graham, with council representatives. I guess it was a fair bit of learning we all had to understand what the function of that committee was. Audit and risk committees have really changed over the last 10 or 15 years. They were predominantly focused on finance and financial statements and annual results and so on. Now it's 95% risk, I would say, and that's a very important development. And I think what was heartening to me is how this council has understood and embraced the need for a strong risk management regime. And that was particularly so, I think, in the workshops you had earlier this year, and I could really see how much commitment and involvement the council had. It's very important that you do know what the key risks are and what the mitigations are, and it seemed to me that you've got your heads around that very, very well indeed. So, look, it's been a privilege. I've enjoyed working with some lovely councillors, and some very astute management people. Been a bit of change since I've been away overseas, but change always happens, doesn't it? So I wish you well for those who are standing in the elections. I think only 2 of you are not standing, so I presume I would hope that many of you will return and continue to look after the interests of the city. So thank you, and it's been a good ride for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And so the first of our councillors that I would now like to farewell is Councillor Tanya Wright, who has served 5 terms on council between 2004 and 2022, with a break from 2013 to 2016. Over her many years with council, Tanya has been a huge advocate for arts, culture and heritage. In this current term, this has included being the portfolio holder in this area, chair of the Arts Advisory Panel, and the council representative on the Hawke's Bay Museums Trust, the Art Deco Trust, Creative Arts Napier, and the Creative Communities Committee. Other roles have included Deputy Chair of the People and Places Committee, a member of the CE Contract Committee, and a member of the Napier Civic Awards Panel. Tanya has also been a valued member of the Museum Joint Working Group and the Library Civic Precinct Project Advisory Group. Tanya is never one to shy away from sharing her views, and we would always know exactly where she stood on an issue. Your open and frank commentary will be missed around the council table. So thank you, Tanya, for your many, many years of service on council and your commitment to our community. We wish you and Kerry all the very best for the future, although I'm sure we will still be seeing you involved in governance roles in our community for some time to come. So thank you from all of us.
Usually get there. You get there.
Let's go, Tanya. You could grab the mic if you want.
Never one to shy away from saying a few words, but thank you very much for those kind words. It's been a real roller coaster ride. Being in politics, you all know, many ups, many downs, and it's been 18 years, so 6 terms actually on the council, and it's with mixed feelings actually that I'm stepping away, but I'm stepping away undefeated and on my own terms, and you know that you haven't seen the last of me. I won't be back around this table, but I will continue to serve our wonderful community in the city of Napier in whatever way that I can in the future, but I need to take this time. As you know, I've had health issues, and I'd like to take the time that I have left to spend with my beautiful family and my fabulous grandchildren. So that will be taking up most of my time, but I will still be involved in many community organisations that I'm very fond of into the future. I've always felt that one person can make a difference. That was why I stood for council many, many years ago. I thought one person can make a difference, and I now feel a little bit sad that I don't feel the same about that now. I think it's really hard for one person to make a difference. I think local government is under attack actually. I think central government regulations and under-resourcing of local government and the death by 1,000 cuts of our democracy present significant challenges to you all in the future. And I think all of you that end up staying, you've got some big issues to deal with, and I really do wish you all the best in your future endeavours, and and keep protecting this lovely city of Napier. She's worth it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. And although Councillor Tapani is not with us today, I do want to take the opportunity to acknowledge and thank him as well. So Api has served 2 terms on council from 2016 to 2022. And from my perspective, there have been 2 key areas where Api has shown leadership during his time with us, being the development of our relationship with Mana Whenua and his focus on environmental issues. Api held the environmental portfolio this term and was Deputy Chair of Future Napier. He was also a member of the CE Contract Committee, the Grants Subcommittee, the Joint Waste Futures Project Steering Group, the Omaranui Joint Refuse Landfill Committee, and the Te Komiti Murawai o Te Whanga. Api also holds a number of external governance roles, including being the co-chair of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council Regional Planning Committee. Having been on council with Api for the past 6 years, it has been wonderful to see him develop and grow in the role. Never afraid to ask questions, I have particularly enjoyed watching him hone and refine his question-asking skills. Api has been an absolute pleasure to work alongside, and I say thank you for your service and commitment to council in our community. With your passion for the environment, I completely understand your decision to run in the Wairoa general seat in this year's Hawke's Bay Regional Council elections, and myself and I'm sure all of the councillors and council officers wish you all the very best with this in your future endeavours. Thank you. Right, so we will move on with the agenda today. Just bearing in mind we have a presentation from Hawke's Bay Airport at 11 and we will be convening for morning tea at 10:30. Next, announcements by myself and just a couple of announcements from me. Firstly, I do just want to acknowledge that last week we had our opportunity to present our submission to the Select Committee on the Water Services Entity Bill, and it clashed with a council workshop that we had here, so I would like to say a very sincere thank you to Councillor Price, who stepped up and represented us in that submission alongside our Acting Chief Executive, Deb Stewart. So thank you to the both of you for going along and sharing our views on this bill with the Select Committee. You did a fantastic job and it's much appreciated. And with it being the last council meeting of the triennium, I also just wanted to take an opportunity to thank and reflect on the last 3 years. It's actually so hard to believe that we're actually nearing the end of the triennium. And as you do come to the end of something like this, you certainly look back and reflect on what has happened. And we have certainly seen a number of challenges over the past 3 years. COVID lockdowns and interruptions from March 2020, vaccine mandates and passports, closure of facilities, cancellation of events, but we have adapted. We have worked hard to ensure that we continue to provide for our community, adapting the way we delivered services, assisting with vaccine drive-throughs, working from home where possible. But I do want to say a special thank you to those of our staff who were unable to work from home, members of our depot team, the response team, the aquarium and other front-facing facilities who continued to work in the community and put themselves at risk so that our community could be served. Of course, in November 2020, we were hit with the flooding event, and I'm sure, like me, there's still many of you in the community who get a little bit nervous when the rain comes. Declaring a state of emergency wasn't something I had ever anticipated or wanted to do in my first service term as mayor. But again, as an organisation, we pulled together, we adapted, and everyone pitched in. On the night, our building inspectors and depot team were out in that torrential rain, working to clear the flooding, working with property owners, and trying to do everything we could possibly do to mitigate the effects of the rain. Thank you to the community services team and everyone else who assisted with the welfare response, and of course Kennedy Park, who accommodated around 130 people, some of them for over a year. And then of course Kennedy Park was also a community isolation facility for COVID, so a very special thank you to that team. On top of all this, we've had to navigate our way through the national reforms, the overarching local government reform, the RMA reform, and of course Three Waters. These have all created additional work for elected members and council officers alike, and uncertainty and frustration. But it hasn't all been doom and gloom this term. There have actually been some pretty amazing achievements. Water was our #1 priority, and there have been dozens and dozens of water projects. This has included our low manganese bores to address our dirty water issues, the Tamatea Parklands closed water area project, the purchase of Mataruaho, the old hospital site, for our new water reservoirs, fire mains upgrades. The list goes on and on. We've started on the design for the new library community hub, and we're partnering with Hawke's Bay Regional Council and Mana Ahariri for the regional park to restore our estuary. There's been the Maraenuri basketball court, the Maraenuri splash pad, which is just about completed, 3, if not 4 new playgrounds in fact, the West Quay traffic safety project for which we won an award, the Pulse of Napier to track our city wellness, and we also won an award, and our team who were in the JLT Australasian Management Challenge and took out the New Zealand title. We also decided to introduce multi-wards from 2025. We found a way to sustainably retain our council housing. We introduced our Te Waka Rangipu Directorate to build and develop our relationships with iwi and mana whenua. We established the new City Assist Safety Program, and we're about to break the soil very soon on the restoration of our precious war memorial. And this is actually just the tip of the iceberg. We could be here for hours. But on top of all this, of course, we're doing our BAU, which is the core of what we do, delivering our services to our community. So I did just want to say a heartfelt thank you from myself and councillors to every single staff member, council officer, manager within Napier City Council. Thank you so much for everything that you have done throughout the last 3 years. I am incredibly proud of what we have achieved. We've been through a lot, but through it all, we have worked together to overcome the challenges and serve our community through the good times and the bad to build a safe, resilient and vibrant city. I'd also like to say a personal thank you from myself to the councillors for your support, for your dedication and hard work, and your unwavering commitment to our community. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, thank you to our community. Thank you for your support, thank you for your patience, and thank you for engaging with us and providing us with your thoughts and feedback. It is because of the efforts of staff, elected members, and the community working together that we have been able to not only weather the storms, but rise above them to deliver some awesome projects for our community. So thank you all very much. Do we have any minor matters not on the agenda? And firstly, I would just like to welcome our Acting Chief Executive, Deb Stewart, for her first time at a council meeting in that role. So welcome, and just asking if you have any announcements.
Thank you, Your Worship, and you'll be pleased to know I do have some this morning. So a very operational one. A second item on the public excluded agenda executive search for recruitment services has been withdrawn as it was not ready to be presented to the council for consideration. It will be on the extraordinary meeting on the 1st of September for your consideration. And just a couple of thank yous from me. We farewelled one of Lance's team this morning who's been with us for 41 years, James Karoria, more fondly known as Bird, a local legend, I would suffice to say. So he's the guy that's been out there cleaning the screens when we've been having our eyes wide open in flood events. So Lance, thank you to James and you for your support for him. And a little thank you to you guys on behalf of the staff for the work you've done in the last triennium. It's been a pleasure working with you, and we'll wish you well for the next wee stint and hopefully see some faces back again. So thanks for your good work. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. I'll move on to the confirmation of minutes. First up, the draft minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on Thursday, the 14th of July, and the draft minutes of the emergency meeting of council held on Thursday, the 11th of August. I have a mover and seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Wright. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Moving on to our agenda, and I would once again invite our acting chief executive to present this month's chief executive's report.
Thank you, Mayor Wise. I'm not going to go through this blow by blow, but I'm happy to take any questions that you've got. I'll assume that the report's been read, but as I say, happy to clarify if required.
Thank you. Opening for questions. Councillor Crown.
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick one around the Te Pihinga project update in our high priority projects there. I see it has a red traffic light at the moment, waiting on confirmation of the sale and purchase agreement. Just wondering if you could give us any further detail on timing or anything that you might have to add.
Thank you, Councillor Crown, and through you, Your Worship. We're just waiting on some final signatories for that piece of work, so my understanding they're still progressing, just taking a little bit of time, and then once we've got the final signatories, we'll work through the governance model going forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Bogue.
Thank you very much, Deborah. A very comprehensive and interesting report. A couple of comments. I just wanted to mention that in the Pulse snapshot, it was really good to see that crime is down by 2.9%. And our rents are horrifically high, as they are in lots of other places. And the housing register numbers seem to be trending down. Perhaps this is because of the Kāinga Ora builds. But I did want to ask a question. You mentioned election issues in your statement, and I wondered if I've been asked questions about where do people do their special votes and what happens if they don't have a post box in their area. I was wondering if we could find out about that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Bogue, and through you, Your Worship. Probably our governance team are best to answer that, and we'll have a range of information available on the website, but Anna, I'm sure, can give a verbal update now.
Yes, special votes can be cast at any district or city council. If you have a voting paper that's not quite right, pop into one of the district or city councils and they'll be able to process your special vote for you no matter where you are in the country. And voting opens on the 16th of September, so that includes the special voting as well. Oh, the postal boxes, sorry. We are going to be putting out some extra, there'll be orange wheelie bins in supermarkets and places like that to collect votes. We will, once we've finalised the locations, we'll put those on the website.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Through you, Madam Chair. Just a question to the Acting Chief Executive around legislative updates. I note you make reference to the Water Services Entity Bill, but there's no reference to the Water Services Bill, which also went through the Select Committee hearing recently. Did our council make a submission on that? Because that is the bill that sets the regulatory framework for potable water supplies.
You're talking about the Taumata Arawai?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yes, our team went through that with a fine-tooth comb and gave them lots of feedback some time ago. Yeah, so we absolutely.
But we didn't make a formal submission when the submissions closed in July?
Yes, we did make a formal submission.
It's just not noted here,
Yeah.
that's all. Thank you.
No, we did.
And the last one?
Any further questions? I am happy to move this from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Price. I did want to just take a moment to actually acknowledge some of the highlights that were included in the statement from the Acting Chief Executive that have occurred over the last month. First up being the Centennial Hall is now reopened, and a huge thank you to everybody that pulled together, in particular Lance Titter, who got stuck in and got that back open so that our many sports teams that use that facility have now got this wonderful new hall available to them. I also want to acknowledge our customer services team who scored very highly in a mystery shopping exercise and were actually ranked 12th out of 80 councils around the country with an overall performance score of 82.1%. So a huge congratulations and thank you to them. And then, of course, last but not least, you may recall me mentioning a few times in earlier meetings that we were participating in Today FM's New Zealand World Cup of Cities competition, and we took out the title for 2022. I understand this is going to become an annual event, so we'll be the defending champions next year. It was a vote-based competition, so again, a huge thank you to everybody out there in the community that put a vote in. It goes to show that community spirit is alive and well here in Napier, so thank you. Councillor Price, did you wish to?
Just one thing, just to reiterate your thanks on Centennial Hall. It's my involvement in basketball. You don't realise how much you need something till you lose it, and it's a big part of our youth with their sport. So it's really good to get that up and running, and it is a really top-notch facility for us. So thanks again, John.
I'll open up to any other councillors that would like to speak to the item. No? I will put that then. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And next we have the adoption of the Dog Control Bylaw Review 2022, and we've got Rachel, Paulina talking to that. Oh, is she online? Welcome, Paulina.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And through you, your worship, I'll take the report as read. This recommendation follow the hearing held on the 12th of July, and I will leave the floor for any questions.
Thank you. I'll open up for any questions from councillors. No. Okay. Do I have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Councillor McGrath. Councillor Simpson, would you like to speak to that?
Just through the chair, for a better word, this gives our animal control and the teams that work fairly hard down there some good teeth to be able to, keep people safe in the community. That's what our animal control does a lot of, and and return people's dogs and animals and much loved pets. So I think this refinement will just make their life a little bit easier, and I think it's going to go through quite smoothly.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think it's a piece of work that's taken a considerable period of time and dedication from the staff. It works two ways. It sets out clearly now for our residents where they can and can't exercise their dogs and the rules around dog maintenance and management. And it helps our staff in addressing some of the issues that currently exist within the dog ownership and behaviour arrangement. Along with other councillors, I sit on the Dogs Hearing Committee, so we see some of the problems that come to council associated with the dogs and dog management, and so I think it's really pleasing to see that we have a new updated bylaw, a new set of guidance around where residents can and can't walk their dogs, whether they need to or don't need to be on leash, and I think it's a far clearer framework for our residents, and it'll be much easier to manage and hopefully make the place a lot safer.
Councillor Bogue.
Just speaking in favour, of course, of this bylaw, but I just also wanted to mention that as well as protection for dogs and dog owners and the public. There's also, we have built in protection for some of the endangered wildlife, and we got quite an impressive list of submissions on sort of terms of the dog side and the wildlife, the dotterels, the penguins, and I'm glad to see that all that has been incorporated into this new bylaw. So I'm definitely in favour of it.
Thank you. We have had 3 in favour in a row. Anyone wishing to speak against? No. I will therefore put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Paulina, and thank you to all the team that have worked on this. It has been a significant piece of work and something that, of course, that our community cares very much about. They're all very passionate about their dogs.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is the interregnum. That's an awful word, isn't it? Period delegation and discharge of committees. And I'd like to invite Caroline Thompson to come and speak to the paper, please.
There was an explanation.
Thank you. So this is a procedural report required by legislation for the duration of the interregnum, I believe. That goes back to my days of Latin at school. So it's for the duration of the interregnum period to provide for delegation to the CE should there be any urgent decisions requiring to be made on behalf of council. And I'll take the report as read.
Thank you, Caroline. Are there any questions? There being no questions, could I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Crown, did either of you wish to speak to that? No. Okay, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Caroline. And next we have the update on the Omaranui Joint Refuge Landfill and the Joint Waste Futures meetings held on the 17th of June 2022. And we have Cameron Burton here to talk to this, please.
Good morning, thank you, Your Worship, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. This paper is just an update on the Omaranui Landfill Committee and Joint Waste Futures Project Steering Committee in relation to updates of the waste minimisation activities in line with the Joint Waste Minimisation and Management Plan held with Hastings District Council. There is a summary in the paper of the activities that we have been carrying out. Some there worth celebration in relation to community engagement in composting workshops and alignment with collaboration at Hastings District Council. And particularly of interest will be the new method of diverting material from Redcliffe Transfer Station, which is seeing a huge change in the amount of waste that we're sending from Napier to Omaranui landfill due to changes in the way that we do things out there. But I'll take the report as read and leave it to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Cam. I'll just open for any questions that councillors may have. Councillor Crystal.
You said you had a good uptake for the composting workshops. So how many people came and bought it? Because I see you've got, discounted compost bins and things.
Correct. They were sold out within the first couple of days of offering them. The numbers I can't recall, but it was somewhere around the 100 to 150 mark of residents that took up that opportunity. So with the success of how quickly they were uptaken, we're looking at other opportunities to offer that to the community as well on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Councillor Brown.
Thank you for the report. Just wondering, in paragraph 4.3, you talk about the joint initiatives between us and Hastings District Council. And I was just wondering, sustainable is attainable. Would you be able to tell us what that is, please?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Sustainable is Attainable is a Hawke's Bay-wide initiative in relation to the industries that create food products largely, and looking at clever ways to reduce waste within that network and utilise waste products for other uses, and looking at reducing packaging and the types of materials that we see going to landfill that otherwise, with a bit of clever thinking, might not have to.
Wonderful. Any further questions? Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Crystal and Councillor Brown. Did you wish to speak to the paper at all?
I'd just say any reduction in waste is a huge win for our environment, and especially in that some of the products that produce the worst leach, like the compost, things that compost and stuff. So this is, you're doing an amazing job, and, we've only got to keep going. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, just echoing what Councillor Crystal said, and I know this is just a really hot topic for our community. Everyone wants to see us reducing our waste and caring way more about the environment now that climate change is upon us. So, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any further councillors wishing to speak to the paper? I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cam. Agenda item number 5 is the Regional Transport Committee update from the 10th of June 2022. And do we have anyone speaking there?
You have me, Your Worship.
Excellent.
And I'll take the report as read if that's okay. Councillor Price was in attendance at that meeting, so he'll be able to furnish you with full answers if required.
Right, lots of questions, folks. Councillor Simpson, you can kick us off.
Through you, Madam Chair, and directly to Councillor Price, representative on that committee. I just want to check, Councillor Price, I noticed in the report there's reference under the NZTA Central Regional Relationships Directors Report. There's a bullet point associated with State Highway 5, and they have a program business case. Is the aim of that program business case to return State Highway 5 back to 100 kilometres an hour?
You got a few hours? Obviously, we are not happy with the ATKs, and Councillor Williams has submitted correspondence to them. There is designated work to take place on that road, but I think the end answer is what they're saying, and there's a new set of rules coming out by Waka Kotahi overruling the rules we got, is that if you haven't got a thing down the middle, what do they call them, cheese cutter or whatever is down the middle, you're 80 Ks. So we don't get definite answers on what they're going to do to bring the road up to scratch, but it's a battle we're fighting because the problem is south they're putting in 110k motorways, north they're putting 110k motorways, and Napier with a big port sits on 80k's. So it's a real concern, and it's a battle we're fighting, but there's a new set of rules coming out which would prevent us appealing what we had in, with the decision now. So I don't know if that answers it for you, but that's where it is in a nutshell. Don't hold your breath to go down to 105k, 100k's quickly.
Thank you, Councillor. 4 kilometre.
Councillor Bogue.
I'm not quite sure who to address this to, but with the huge rain event they had on the top of the North Island, top of the South Island last week, there's been an enormous amount of damage done to the roading networks, both the Wakatahi and within the city. Now, who pays for that? Does Wakatahi, does the government pay for the repairs, or would that fall on the shoulders of the council? anybody knows.
Thank you, Councillor Bogue. I'm not sure that I know the detail of that, but through you, Your Worship, it's a combination. So everybody has a bit of responsibility. Some of it will be dealt with through maintenance contracts with the maintenance provider, which I think at the top of the South Island is Downer via an alliance model. Some of it will rest with the ratepayer depending on the nature of the road. Some of it will be insurance. So it is very much a mixed bag of solutions in terms of attributing cost.
Let's hope it doesn't happen here.
So,
Councillor Price.
so I think also that you would have seen on the news that the government are also putting money in separately for some of the repairs. The amounts they're putting in, I wouldn't imagine would repair a lot, but it's a combination.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I don't think it's a question that I need to pose to Councillor Price because I was present for part of this meeting. But I'd just like to draw reference to the minutes, and particularly item 7, where they discussed regional active transport. And the minutes are erroneous, and the report was erroneous in that the Napier City Council has an active transport committee, because we do not have an active transport committee. So some of the information provided to the Regional Transport Committee was incorrect. And it also says that governors wouldn't, well, there was a suggestion that active transport members, of which we don't have, would be part of a TAG or a technical advisory group. And governors would not be included in any of the structure. So the Regional Cycle Governance Group, which I chair, is not comfortable with where we are sitting presently with regional transport. We will continue to advocate that active transport should be part of the Regional Transport Committee. They have a goal of reducing emissions. One of the greatest ways to reduce emissions is to take cars off the road, and that is replacing it with active forms of transport, walking, cycling, scootering, whatever. So we will continue to work to get our voice heard at the Regional Transport Committee. But I'm disappointed that the minutes indicate matters that are erroneous. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And would you like, as an action, to be noted that we ask for the minutes to be corrected with
Yes,
that information?
I would.
Yeah,
I did raise it on the day, but I would like the minutes corrected.
thank you. And just following on from that, in terms of having an active transport committee within Napier City Council, is that something that you believe we should be investigating?
I think at one of the previous meetings, I posed that to our former chief executive, that was something that we need to have. And so I would like to think that in the next triennium, that is part of our transport portfolio, that we have an active transport committee.
Okay, so can we also just note that for the new triennium, that we need to look at the establishment of an active transport committee, the incoming council, to look at that. Thank you. Councillor Price.
Just further to that, there is a paper before the Transport Committee to move a member into that group, and it was held up really. We're about to vote on it, and Katrina Brunton just wanted a few more inquiries done on it. That'd be a fair comment, Councillor Taylor?
It's fair comment. However, the people who are actively involved are not discussed. It's not discussed with them, so that's why information is incorrect.
So probably next term it will get sorted.
Thank you. Any further questions from councillors? No? Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Price, Councillor Taylor. Did either of you wish to say anything further on the...
I've said enough.
No, I think we've said enough.
Any other councillors wish to speak for or against? So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Next up, we have the results of the 2021-22 resident survey and the 2022 stakeholder consultation. And I welcome Jess Allium to the front to talk to the paper. Thank you.
Morena koutou. So this paper presents the results of the 21-22 resident survey and the stakeholder consultation. So overall, there has been a general decline in public sentiment regarding council services and performance, 55% overall satisfaction in the 2021-22 results compared to 65% in the 2021 results. Most indicators went down this year, with the biggest drops in council leadership, roads and footpaths results. The stakeholder consultation results were more positive, with the 2022 results showing consistent levels of satisfaction and perceptions of council's performance compared with the 2021 results. 3 out of 4 stakeholders, or 72%, felt satisfied with their current council relationship, and those who worked with closer relationships to council typically reported greater satisfaction. The profile of the results of the resident survey results is likely the result of multiple factors, and largely could be influenced by some macro external factors such as national level policies and decisions, and economic conditions. And we did talk to the providers who carried out the survey results, and they have reported some significant declines in trends right across New Zealand. So other councils have seen some significant drops in results as well. But when comparing against national benchmarks, that provides some insights into specific areas of concern for the council. Largest areas of disparities for Napier City Council's results are city facilities, library services, swimming facilities, car parking, 3 water services, sewage, stormwater, drinking water, and probably the results are prolonged frustration with specific issues. Frustration can gradually erode general sentiment, and also being at the end of an electoral cycle can generally have an impact on results, I think, in terms of where you are in the electoral cycle can have an impact on public perception. And I think that in conjunction with some of those macroeconomical environmental factors could probably be seen as having an impact on the results for this year's survey results. So happy to take any questions on the survey results, but also largely take the paper as read.
Thank you very much, Jess. I'll open for any questions. Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, just through the chair. I'm just wondering how and you may or may not have the information for this, but I think I read on there that 300 of the responses were online out of 452. Is there a way we can guarantee that those respondents are actually Napier people? Because I remember seeing the survey come up on some of our Facebook groups, and some of those groups, a lot of the people don't actually live in Napier, but they would have had the opportunity to do the survey.
When you say groups, can you just clarify what you mean by groups?
Oh, Napier News, Hawke's Bay News and Views, I think it is, general Facebook groups. But some of them have got, you know, members into the 50,000s, and I don't think we'd have 50,000 people on Facebook in Napier.
Oh, in terms of membership of some of those groups, the Napier News subscriptions. I probably need to take that offline and clarify with the providers of the survey in terms of the SIL research who carries out the survey in terms of how they collect the data.
Yep.
I don't have that information with me today.
Councillor Bogue.
The report in the paper today said that other councils around us, such as the Hastings District Council and other local territorial authorities, have deferred their survey because of the issues around COVID interfering with, you know, people's perceptions and that sort of thing. So I think this was a decision made by our chief executive, and I think we do need to take that into consideration, that it's hard times, as you say, for everybody. And if we compare with Hastings, they're going to do theirs later on in the year, so it's hard to make a direct comparison there.
Yes, so through your worship, we made the decision to go ahead just in terms of benchmarking, carrying out the survey at the regular cycle, And certainly that was the feedback that we received, that those macro environmental factors certainly should be taken into account, that more widely all other councils have seen similar trends in terms of a downturn in their results, and those external factors around policy decisions, local government reform, certainly public perception around local authorities and councils, territorial authorities in particular. Public perception is trending downwards at the moment. There is a feeling of more negatively towards public perception of local government authorities at the moment, so we should take that into account.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So while we talk about the current term, when we look at the trends long term over a decade are actually declining. So the question is, how do we address that? So my question to management is, when you receive a survey like this, what action do you take back into the organisation to look at how we can measure these outcomes and determine accuracy, and what steps we take to level or improve the perception of service? Because I think it's really just a perception thing in some cases.
Yes, so I think through you, Your Worship, we do need to look at the results of the survey, because I think one is we can say that we need to take into account these macro environmental factors, and obviously, we're looking at benchmarking ourselves against other councils, but certainly public perception is trending downwards, and particularly around looking at benchmarking ourselves against other councils. There are some public service facilities, certainly where there is some dissatisfaction. So recommendation in the paper is that the senior leadership team workshop the results of the survey internally as a team, and also with the incoming council as part of the induction process with an incoming council, is that we have a strategic off-site day with the incoming council to actually workshop the results of the survey into priority setting and strategic objective setting, working into the annual plan and the long-term plan cycle around setting work programs and priorities for the next long-term plan. I think this is a useful data set in terms of what the public and the community is telling us, where we've got some gaps and where we haven't met public expectations around meeting expectations, I think, around the last 12 months.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no further questions, then I'm happy to move this agenda item from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Crown. As has been noted by Jess in her presentation, this is a national trend with people's satisfaction with public authorities down across the board at a local and central government level. However, this is still a disappointing result for us, of course. We don't like to see a decrease in satisfaction levels, but it's actually vital that we get feedback from our community in all forms, and it's a commitment that we made at the start of this triennium. This is one of the many tools that we use to help us set priorities for improvement, and measurement is often hard to hear, but it's crucial. We work for our community, so hearing what's important to them is essential to making sure we are delivering what they need. And I'm actually very proud that we had the courage to seek feedback from our community this year, when a number of councils around the country have chosen to defer it. We've had a lot of change over a short time here in Napier City Council across a lot of areas. We are drilling down into each of these focus areas to see how we can work and address what needs to change. In most cases, the results are reflecting what we already know and what's already in our work program. So it's good to have these priorities reinforced. We're still working through the data in the survey, but in many cases, as I said, it is reinforcing the program that we have already committed to, particularly in our Three Waters, for example. So yes, water has been a key priority in the last few years, and we've got a significant work program we're rolling out. Some of these major projects, some as preventative maintenance, and some as capital works. And knowing that we have this work program in place makes it even more vital to continue to fight against the proposed central government Three Waters reform, who we will not be able to have any guarantee that they will commit to the same level of work that we have. With transportation, including roads, we are working closely with other agencies in this space, including central government, Waka Kotahi and contractors. We have an ambitious work plan we can only achieve in collaboration with these partners. Securing contractors and locking in timeframes has been challenging this term with supply chain issues and COVID-19 disruptions, but we are moving forward. Car parking has been a focus this term, and we've done a lot of work in this space. So to see that this has improved is great, although the overall satisfaction is still low. But with the work that we're doing in this space next year, we should start to see issues around car parking alleviated. And leadership is certainly something we are focusing on at the moment. With the new council in place in October, we will be in a position to move forward with the appointment of our new chief executive, and obviously we will be working very closely with our executive leadership team through to this time to ensure that we're continuing to support and meet the needs of our community. There has been a lot of change in the last year, but change isn't necessarily bad, and change is moving forward. We need to celebrate the successes. We need to reflect on the areas that need improvement, and we will be working very hard to continue to build trust with our community. Councillor Crown, did you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, absolutely support your kōreroas, and I just want to show some gratitude for the people that do engage in these surveys, etc. They are part of the puzzle when we are trying to assess how we are performing as an organisation on behalf of them. The community are at the core of everything that we do and the decisions that we make around this table, and the mahi that people are doing out there on the ground. We've got 550 people that work here at NCC, part of our whānau, and most of them are giving their bloody all every day. So to see something like this come through, I hope that they understand that they are supported, that we're committed to them and the work programs and the plans, future plans that we have in place. I see some really good opportunities here. Things like this aren't actually black and white, you know, this is just one data set. We have 6 weekly reports that come to us that measure our performance on a number of different topics. For example, our water. So, you know, we have that 6 weekly report that comes to us, and we know that complaints around the discoloured water have dropped quite significantly over the last 9 months or so. Yeah, so there are lots of opportunities. And the other one I think that really stands out is going through the table in there around how these results link up to standards that we set in the long-term plan. Well, there aren't any. So making sure that there is a connect between the questions that we're asking, the work that we're doing, and that there is transparency around how those have been recorded and how they're being measured, I think is really important and a great opportunity for all of us. Finally, a bit of a positive, those who work with us most closely, those stakeholders are actually positive about their experience working with council, their confidence in this organisation. So I think that, you know, once again, it's grey. It's a whole mix of things that come together to give you a true reflection on the performance, and this is just one. But really want to encourage our community to keep talking to us, keep engaging in these opportunities, and we're listening.
Thank you, Councillor Crown. Open up for other councillors to speak in support or against the agenda item. No, and so I had intended actually in my opening statement to talk about the stakeholder consultation as well. So thank you for reminding me, Councillor Crown. I'll take a quick opportunity in my right of reply. And again, I think sometimes we do tend to focus too much on the negative and not on the positive. And this is the second year that we have undertaken stakeholder consultation, and there was improvements across the board in every single area. And I know certainly that this is something that we have been focusing on in terms of building those relationships with key stakeholders across all manners of organisations. So I do want to congratulate and say thank you to all of council officers and elected members that have been involved in working on and developing these relationships. And I think just reflecting on the fact that sometimes in the past we haven't been that good at communicating our good news stories. And I know that our comms team, Julia and her team, that's something that they've been really focusing on in the last 6 months in terms of sharing with our community what we have been doing and what we have been achieving. And I know that they're certainly committed to continuing to do that in the new triennium and trying to get out as much information as we can across as many different platforms as we can so that our community and our stakeholders feel informed and know what we're doing and can celebrate with us what we've achieved. So thank you very much. So I'll put that motion now. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Jess. And we will adjourn now for our morning tea break, and we'll be back at 11 o'clock. Thank you, everyone. Everybody, we will reconvene our council meeting, and first up I would like to welcome to present to us today from the Hawke's Bay Airport their Chair Wendy Harvey and Chief Executive Rob Stratford. So welcome, you're here to present to us the shareholder annual review for 2022.
Well, thank you, Worship. And yes, as you've just pointed out, for the first time, our new Chief Executive, Rob Stratford. Rob has been with us since April, and it would be fair to say hit the ground running. And so, thank you for the opportunity to meet with you. We are looking at year-end results, although I would say that we're still waiting to resolve the final audit with Deloitte, who are our new auditors for this year. So they're unaudited results that we're going to present to you this morning. I think I've tried to manage expectations this year, apart from the fact that when we met with you at the beginning of our financial year last year, we come off the beginning of a very strong year in terms of passenger numbers and so on. Little did we know that around the corner was the Auckland lockdown, and clearly that has had a significant and adverse impact on our results for this year. So what you'll see here are some of the highlights that we did achieve this year, and Rob's going to then go on and take through some of the financial results. Very pleasing to see that we finally got the terminal open in August of last year. Not so, I guess, pleasing is the fact that it's taken us some time to move forward with the next phase of the project, which has been the forecourt and canopy. The reason why that's taken so long, and just about every person that ever talks to me about the airport wants to know when the terminal's going to be finished. We have been subjected to many of the same challenges that anyone has in the area at the moment. So supply chain, contract resourcing, and obviously price escalation. But I can say to you that at this point, we are looking for the major construction phase to be finished in the next week or so. And if you've been out there in the last couple of weeks, you'll have seen that we can now see what the new wayfinding will look like. We're just at the stage now where we're moving on to the actual canopy and some of the garden areas. So at this stage, we're incredibly optimistic that we'll be looking at completion and full completion in October. One of the things that has been really pleasing for this year is that in spite of all the challenges, the first and the most important thing that we stressed at the beginning of the terminal project was that we would not accept any injuries. And there's no jiggery-pokery there. That is the result. We have had no lost time injuries across the airport in full this year. Passenger numbers were significantly down, and you would have seen the numbers that we were anticipating in the SOI. This is 25% below what that number was, and Rob will give you a little bit more of a rundown on that. But fair to say that the bulk of that came because of the Auckland lockdown and the extended duration of that. But the other part of it is that passenger recovery has been slow to occur. Travel confidence hasn't been high, and it's really only been in the last couple of months that we're starting to see the pre-COVID numbers consistently come through in terms of passenger numbers. We did post a net profit of adverse of $678,000, and revenue was fairly consistent with the year before at 6.7 million. EBITDA 2.8, which was obviously down on what we'd anticipated in the SOI. I'll talk to you a little bit more about the solar project in a minute, but one of the key things that did happen this year was that we entered into a partnership arrangement with Manawa, who were formerly known as Trustpower. And that's been a key move forward for that project, because Manawa in themselves, the scale and the expertise that they carry with them has been, hugely beneficial to this project going forward. So we've been really pleased to be able to formalise that arrangement with them. One of the things I keep coming back to you about birds, this is the topic du jour, but this year we did see a reduction in bird strike. You'll understand from previous discussions why that's important. But this year we did happen to have a really big problem in February. For some reason, they descended on the airport, seagulls descended on the airport in droves. So we've had to dedicate a lot of time and resource to managing that particular challenge or risk for us this year. We continue on our sustainability journey, and we achieved, I've been working towards the level 3 airport accreditation. And one of the other things in that regard that we did this year was we did an ESG materiality assessment. So what we did was we got an independent advisor to come in and actually survey our key stakeholders to see whether we got our sustainability priorities right and whether we should be revisiting that. So the board's seen the outcome of that. It would be fair to say that we're pretty much on track, but it's really a case of there's a couple of areas that we might need to refocus on. One of the other things is I guess the long-term impact of climate change on the airport. We continue to work on the basis that we believe that it's a defend rather than a retreat approach to location of the airport. But we continue to ensure that we have access to the best information we can in that regard. And we are currently working with the council in terms of some of the testing, the groundwater testing on that site. One of the other things which was incredibly pleasing, strategically, we've always looked to try not only at looking at increasing point-to-point destinations from the airport, but also looking at the carriers that work from the airport. And this year we saw a return by Origin Air back into Hawke's Bay. Their service, I think, is 3 days a week at the moment. And obviously we'd always welcome discussions where we have the opportunity to increase that with them. We saw another operator that we entered into a lease with from within the terminal, Ballantino's. So you would have noticed that we've got the two offerings. We've got the shop that's operated by Ballantino's, and then we have Bay Expresso, who I might say continue to go from strength to strength out there. So I think that's pretty much in a year that, you know, there are some good things to have taken from this year if you choose to look beyond the numbers. Rob.
Thanks, Wendy. And look, this graph probably illustrates the passenger numbers almost falling off a cliff. And if you look at the Air New Zealand number and that steady decline, and then in 2022, which is around that October, November, December 1921, is when it became extremely difficult for the airport. I wasn't here at that time. Since I've arrived in April, we've seen on a month-to-month basis the numbers starting to climb again. So that is really pleasing. It's good to see that people are returning, and April was probably the turning point for the airport. When I arrived, things were starting to come back on track. So the highlights there, obviously a reduction in passenger numbers. It did fall off a cliff when Auckland shut itself down, and we obviously are below our SOI numbers that were originally forecast. So on a financial point of view, revenue 6.7 million, pretty much the same or very similar to the previous year. Operating expenditures popped up, and I'll talk about that. And overall, at the moment, on a draft financial basis, we've got a net loss after tax of 600,000. So as mentioned, the passenger numbers fell off a cliff, and management, I think, has worked, and the board has worked really hard to manage the parts of the business that they can manage. Obviously, when you've got really one revenue stream that's coming from Air New Zealand substantially and that falls, there's not a lot you can do to fix the problem other than to manage your expenditure. And so management and the board quite correctly stepped in and have taken some pretty tight measures to hold CapEx and OpEx in a controlled manner. The white bar there, which is the EBITDA number, and an EBITDA is really for non-accountants is net profit before tax, interest and depreciation, is what we use to measure one of the financial performances of the business, and that's really what we call cash flow. So you can see that cash flow declined as well in 2022, and the main rises in the expenditure line around this are, of course, there's recruitment costs. With some changes in staff numbers, including myself. We've seen significant increases in insurance from the new terminal. Our electricity prices, interestingly, have doubled because the size of the terminal is now significantly bigger than it was. Rates have gone up, and of course the other good news about this is we've welcomed within house the new fire and service team as well. So there have been cost increases that have driven, as well as the drop in passenger numbers that have driven us into a loss in the 2022 year. So looking at the balance sheet, the bank debt has only marginally increased despite all the activity that's been going on. And, you know, if you visit the terminal regularly, you'll see that it's pretty amazing. So 2.8 million is our increase in debt, which is pretty good, associated with the terminal and the forecourt. From the loss, we have a 200K reduction in our equity, and we've so far got a 1.67 million increase in net assets. And when you sort of marry all those three together, you end up with a position that's actually not too bad given what the business has been through, and particularly now that the numbers are returning, we are now profitable, the equity percentage and the gearing ratios will improve over time as we move forward. So it's actually not too bad and too gloomy, really. We're actually starting to see things improve substantially, which is lovely.
So just on that passenger return, the last couple of months we've been seeing in the vicinity of about 50,000 people going through the terminal, and in reality that's not far from what we were looking at back in 2019. You know, we did, which in some ways is reassuring because we increased the size of the terminal in anticipation that you know, we would have passengers north of 800,000. So, you know, at this point, who knows what's around the corner in terms of COVID, but certainly things are tracking in the right direction. And interestingly, I don't know if you've been to the terminal recently, but that's an area, the photos showed Bay Espresso, and the number of times you can go there any time of the day, and it's absolutely packed at the moment. So, yeah, we're reasonably confident that, you know, we are heading in the right direction. So yeah, I think we've done passengers to death really. Let's talk about how do we get ourselves out of the situation from ever happening again. And we've been really clear that our strategy has been one of diversification. So starting with, let's talk about having more than one carrier operating from the airport. So Origin Air has obviously resumed their flights there. One of the things that we would always look to do is to continue to have conversations with other providers, and certainly Hawke's Bay is becoming increasingly a destination of interest to other parties. And also the type of flights that are coming in. Air New Zealand in itself have made no secret of the fact that at some point in the future they will be looking to introduce the jets into their regional fleet, and obviously that has the potential to flow through to benefits for us in terms of services to the region. One of the things that we have really focused on this year is relaunching the business park. And I guess aligned with the freight strategy is to look at that as a proposition for freight carriers. Obviously that airside access is of huge interest to those that have the need to, in terms of cargo and access to aircraft. So we are now actually taking a more proactive approach. So rather than the build it and they will come approach, one of the reasons that attracted us to Rob as a candidate was the vision, I guess, that he had in terms of how we might go ahead and positively progress the business park, and we're just starting to execute on that now. But it does mean that we're proactively going out and seeking appropriate customers or tenants to look at for the site. The other thing that we are also, I think we've taken a much stronger approach to is the development of air freight out of the region. I'm not sure if I've said to you previously, but if you compare Hawke's Bay Airport with the likes of Nelson Airport, they have 2,000 tonnes of freight go out of that airport every year. We have 200 tonnes. And yet there is a wealth of opportunity sitting out there. And in terms of this region, so one of the things that Rob has been focusing on in his short time with us is to actually seek out potential interest from not only producers but also the airlines and freight forwarders to see what the opportunities are for expanding that offering from Hawke's Bay. And at this point, we're looking to have a paper before the board in around October, because if we do commit to this, there will be some upfront costs that obviously would be required in terms of making sure that we've got the facilities to support that service. One of the other things that we're also looking to do is to focus, I think, a bit more in terms of the customer experience. You know, part of our strategy, customer is more than just giving lip service. It's actually saying that we want to ensure under our diversification strategy that the airport creates a sense of place, that people come not just to pick up and drop off visitors, but actually there's a reason for them to spend time there. So one of the things that we would like to look at is improving on the dwell time of people who are visitors to the airport and what they might experience when they're there. So looking at expanding the offerings, not only within the terminal, but what might be available outside the terminal in terms of that business park development. One of the other things, and Rob did talk to you, that part of our cost management last year was to defer major capex, but you can only, as a council, you'd know, you can only do that for so long. And one of the things that has suffered quite severely, as you would have experienced, has been the car parking around the airport. So this year, our focus will be on looking at the customer experience, not only within the terminal, but outside the terminal, and looking at our car parking and our ticketing arrangements, which hopefully will bring to an end many, many years of frustration in this space. The solar farm. So as I mentioned to you, we have entered into a new partnership with Manawa Energy. Part of entering into that is that when we initially started the project back in 2019, 2020 with Central Lines, was obviously the world was a different place then, not only in terms of, I guess, energy demand, cost of energy, but also the cost to construct a project of this nature. So in terms of re-establishing the project with Manawa, one of the things that we're currently working on at the moment is we've got 4 key work streams. We know that physically we can build on this site. One of the things that Manawa has undertaken to explore is whether there is a potential to, in fact, go with a bigger project on the site. And that obviously goes to, with scale, hopefully comes the benefits of the costs. So COVID hasn't been friendly to us in lots of ways, and one of those has been the pressure that's been put on supply chain and inflation. So even down to the panels and the cost of construction, that is something else that we've had to go away and have a look at. So for the last few weeks, what's been focused on is revisiting the numbers, revisiting the size or scale of the project. Rob and his team have actually now gone out and started to sit down with potential customers for the offtake. And what's really encouraging there is that there is strong interest from local users, energy users. So it's all very well producing the juice, but if nobody wants to take it, it's not particularly viable as a project, but we have established there is keen interest in that space. So the program of work that we've got in place there is that we will be meeting with Manawa towards the end of next month to basically look at the refresh project numbers, and from there, it's a case of how big, whether the numbers still stack up, and on the assumption that it is a viable project, we then move into looking at consultation with a view to then launching to consent. But at this point, it's really a case of knowing what the size of the beast is and what we're actually dealing with. One of the other things that obviously we're really mindful of is the place of the airport as a part of, and a key player in the region. And that has been something that we've been talking about with Rob in terms of, I guess, not only our sense of place, but our relationship with the region. So what we're looking at, what Rob's been doing is getting out there and making himself known, but also starting to engage more intensively with our tenants and key stakeholders in the community, and that includes mana whenua. We've also had, I guess, some revisiting of our sponsorship program and looking to see, to the extent that we're able to support local activities such as biodiversity, Hawke's Bay and so on. We've been working in terms of those sponsorship arrangements, and of course we continue to look to support those large regional events. I know, Your Worship, the experience of going to the marathon, Hawke's Bay Marathon this year was huge, just because it gave a sense of normal, I think, that had been missing for quite some time, and we'll continue to look at the opportunities for us to partner in those sorts of activities. And obviously we've been looking to get out there, engage not only with business but also our GA community at the airport. So I think that's pretty much where I'll leave it in terms of the customer experience. But as I say, the focus now is making sure that what we're providing not only meets the expectations but the needs of the community that we're there to serve. Rob, that's a blue one, so that's back to you again.
Back to me again.
Yeah.
So the financial outlook looks rather bright, and you can see from the graph that already with the rebound since April, May and June have been really solid, and so we're edging above already our forecast that was placed and done in the SOI. So that's a really encouraging graph. To support that, we've just negotiated or renegotiated our annual contract with Air New Zealand, and that provides us with a 36% increase in the revenue per passenger. So that's another really positive outcome. And then the third one is that we've been looking in detail at our cash flows going forward, and we can fund the CapEx and the OpEx plans that Wendy's talked about in the 22-23 year without increasing any debt levels. So it's looking really positive from where I'm sitting, and it's a fun place to be now that passengers are returning. We've got some cash flow coming in, and we've also got those other projects that Wendy's been talking about, obviously the Soul Farm, the business park and freight.
So we're on the up and up would be the way I'd describe it. So yeah, just to finish that, on that Air New Zealand repricing, that's actually been a key part of the work that we've been engaged in this quarter. And you'll be aware from previous presentations that basically we're in a 5-year cycle with Air New Zealand, but we do have an annual review which basically works on unders and overs. So as hard as it is on cash flow in terms of passenger numbers being low this year, that number that you see, that 36% increase, is actually, I guess, the carryover and the catch-up for this year, as well as recognising there's additional valuation, the increased valuation that came out of the terminal and the facilities that go into the air services. So look, I'll leave it at that point, and if councillors or your worship have any questions, we're happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Wendy and Rob. Are there any questions from councillors? Councillor Crystal.
Just something I thought of when you were talking about the forecourt and the parking and everything. Is there a plan to have a regular bus shuttle into the airport?
Yes, there is. Yes, I mean, it's before my time, but we're continuing to try and push that with the regional council and have a regular bus service coming in and out of the airport that meets the needs of passengers, because many of them, of course, or some of them, don't have cars or don't wish to take cars to the airport. So yes, it's very much on our radar.
Yeah.
So Stephanie, who was the interim CE, has actually been working with the regional council on that. So it's not just wishful thinking, it is an initiative that is currently underway.
Yeah, because I know in Auckland that I use that all the time. That's really convenient to jump on the shuttle and, you know, it stops regularly and vice versa coming back rather than getting a taxi, which is quite expensive.
And of course, with
And
our
sustainable.
bike charging stations and so on, there are other alternative forms of transport to the airport as well.
Not with your suitcase.
I've got wheels on.
Councillor Bogue.
Thank you for that report. I read recently that the airport has the goal of being carbon neutral by 2030. I wondered how that was proceeding, and is that affected by issues around the solar farm?
Yeah, I mean, no, not at all. In fact, we're making good progress with that. We may be, well, it'd be lovely to say that we were the first airport to be self-sufficient in the country. That's our aim, and we're working hard to try and achieve that. So no delays with it. And the solar farm will just help that initiative as we go forward.
So just if I could ask again something else. Obviously, you know, the aeroplanes coming in and out, you know, won't be carbon neutral or anything like that, but I wondered about the vehicles that you're going to be using around the airport, you know, transporting equipment and luggage and things like that. They be electric?
Well, we do have a fleet replacement, I think, how many in our fleet?
Two.
Yeah, we do have a fleet replacement policy of swapping out for electric. However, I would say that in that respect, the fire truck is the one item in our fleet which I think it is actually due up for replacement soon. We've taken the approach that at the moment the technology has not kept a pace. So what we are looking to do is to lease until we commit to actually purchasing something that actually does align with an electric fire truck. So yeah, but that, I mean, as you may appreciate, I'm on the board of FENS, and that's actually something that's tasking most users of fire trucks these days, so yeah.
Well, it's a very commendable goal anyway. It's excellent, thanks.
Councillor Simpson.
Through you, Madam Chair, just on the solar farm, I just can't remember the figures. If you could just remind me the figures of the plan and what you would hope by increasing the size of the solar farm that you'd be able to accommodate. And the reason I ask that question is I understand the vulnerability of the power grid network into Hawke's Bay, so that's where the solar farm becomes potentially a critical element of sustainability of our network.
Good question. I'll take this one since I've previously worked with Unison. Look, one of the things about that, so at the moment, the plan is based on 25 megawatts, which is about the equivalent of support for 4,000 houses. And that can be accommodated by taking, basically constructing a line back to the Tamatea substation. If we looked at something north of that, then we've already been in discussion with Unison, and we would need to revisit that because the Tamatea sub wouldn't be able to take it. What we are looking at, though, is that Unison's quite confident that there are alternative solutions and potentially not as expensive as maybe the option of taking it back to Tamatea. So we're mindful of that, but if you look at the site, you could basically double the size of the project, but as you correctly identified, it's got to go somewhere, and at the moment, there isn't the current capacity to do much north of the 25 megawatt.
Any further questions? No? Oh, thank you, Wendy and Rob, for coming and speaking to us today, and congratulations on all that you have achieved and the ongoing challenges that have faced the industry. I think we're looking forward to the completion of the forecourt area and coming through to have a look in October or later this year. And all the very best for next year. It's great to see those graphs trending upwards, and here's hoping we don't have anything else crop up over the coming months to prevent that from continuing. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, moving on to the final agenda item on our open agenda. Thank you, Rob. The Section 10A Annual Dog Control Report, and I welcome up Rachel Bailey to present the report, please.
Tēnā koutou. So this is also a procedural report today for you under Section 10A of the Dog Control Act. And it is, if adopted today, we would post this onto our website and it would be forwarded to the Secretary of Internal Affairs as required under that legislation. And whilst it is procedural, I think it does highlight the volume of work that the animal control team undertake on a year. They are a very small team, and you can see from the amount of complaints that they handle, the infringements, the number of menacing and dangerous dogs, that they have a significant workload. So I'll take the report as read and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Just a question from myself. I just note that in the impounding and rehoming data that's presented, there is a category called Other, death by natural causes, etc., in brackets, where last year there was 0 and this year there's 56. Just wondering if we could have a little bit more information around that.
Look, I don't know what they've put into Other. It's one of those categories where Other is very useful sometimes, but I can provide more of a breakdown to councillors after this if you like.
That's great, thank you. We'll just take note of that action. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, just Rachel, through you, Chair. Also, there's a trend of dangerous dogs category increasing, menacing dogs only slightly. Is that because of reclassification, or is there just some explanation?
Yeah, so this is our total number of dangerous dogs. So it's not just for this year period, if you like. So we now have 35 dangerous dogs within our area. So if, up from 24 from last year. And yeah, is it a trend? I don't know. It's just an increase in dangerous dogs in our area for sure.
Okay, thank you.
So that's an accumulative figure then? That
It is,
you've got to
yes.
register, and as they're added, yeah.
Once they're classified as a dangerous dog, that remains, yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Wright and Councillor Price. Would you like to speak to that?
All good, thank you.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Rachel. And as you said, a huge amount of work by the dog control team, so if you can pass our thanks on to them for all that they do. Thank you.
Thank you.
This brings us to the reports and recommendations from the standing committees. I will move them through as a group under each committee, so if there is a paper that you wish to have taken separately, just please indicate as I read out the title. First up, we have the reports from the Napier People and Places Committee on the 26th of July, Homelessness in Napier report, revised Napier Hastings smoke-free and vape-free policy, and the Marine Parade Pool's future delivery model. Could I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Bode. Seconder, Councillor Wright. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Next, we have the reports from the Prosperous Napier Committee on the 26th of July, the Investment Property Portfolio Review, and the Investment Policy Review. Thank you, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Crown. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Reports from Sustainable Napier Committee held on 28th of July was the Napier Pirate Rugby and Sports Club Park Island proposal, Three Waters Reform Program progress, Three Waters operational update, capital program delivery, proposed new playground for Southwest Taradale, proposed project deferral Pukatitiri Road upgrade, land adjacent 18 Sealy Road road stopping, Alexander Park Union easement. Just noting that we do have a suggestion from Ngā Manukanuka o Te Iwi for an addition to the resolution on that particular paper. Which will be in the minutes of the Ngā Manukanuka o Te Iwi. We might just take that one separately for now, so we'll just leave that one out of moving this particular block. Road stopping of the land adjacent to 85 Boyd Road, Paraiati. Lease of reserve Napier Frivolity Minstrels Incorporated, and the final item, the lease of reserve of Bledisloe Park, was a decision of council. So can I have a mover for all bar number 8? Thank you, Councillor Price, seconded by Councillor Simpson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. And just to bring to your attention that the suggestion from the Ngā Manukanuka o Te Iwi Committee on the Alexander Park Unison easement was to direct officers to request a representative of Mana Whenua to carry out a karakia on site prior to the start of works. So we're happy to endorse that additional recommendation into the resolutions. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Crown. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Now the reports from the Future Napier Committee, and this is the resource consent activity update. I am going to be taking the Better Off funding separately, and then the proposed change to financial contributions policy. So a mover and seconder for 1 and 3, please. Thank you, Councillor Crystal and Councillor Simpson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So just to provide a bit of an update on our Better Off funding paper, we have had the opportunity to discuss the proposed expenditure of this funding with Mana Aharere, and they have provided us with some feedback that they would actually like to see the $200,000 that has been proposed for the regional park master plan actually be transferred to increase the amount for iwi capability to $700,000 in total. And they have met with council officers, chief executive, acting chief executive, and the council officers are happy to support the recommendation that has come through. And I guess also bearing in mind that Mana Aharere are part of the joint committee on the regional park, and so this funding could well end up being part of what we need to ensure that they're able to resource and provide us with the support that we need with regards to the regional park, without committing to that specifically, but just saying that they are obviously an integral part of that project. So I'll just open that up for any questions that, Councillor Taylor.
So the 200,000 that we are looking to transfer was for the preparation of the master plan. So if we transfer that to iwi capability, how will the master plan preparation be funded?
Through the chair, I think the overall budget or that's allocated inside, I guess, to deliver the regional park is substantial over a long period of time. And we got kind of the heads up about this yesterday when we were meeting with Tanya Eden about that. And the Better Off funding, like the regional park, is something that is already in the council's budget. And the Better Off funding would basically bring it in sync, perhaps bring some of that forward. So we would be looking, I guess, to work out how we can then go back into that funding pool and get the necessary funding for the master planning as that gets into the delivery stage from the overall budget. And in the meantime, that the indicative funding, I guess, in the Better Off funding can be moved towards the 200,000 can be moved out of there. So that 200,000, in other words, was never kind of like a full delivery of the regional park. The regional park was already in there. It was just more a sequencing of the budget, if that makes sense.
So just a further question. So that means that the 200,000 is added to the 500,000 under that category. It's not including prepare the master plan. That is going to be dealt with other processes.
Correct. We would have to go back into the budgets to find how we would manage that process. But I guess what I want the council to be aware of, is that we had already committed to the regional park anyway, and there was budget in there. So regardless of the Better Off funding, we would have had to find that a way of delivering the master plan.
Any further questions on this particular, Councillor Brown?
Still sort of formulating, so bear with me. Just wondering, this money, can you say again the purpose of it? To go to the
iwi capability.
iwi capability. Just wondering sort of how that works in practice. How does that money go towards the iwi capability?
It's meaning the allocation out of the total Better Off funding package of 6.46 million will be 700,000 for iwi capability as opposed to 500,000.
Yeah.
We are yet to work through the detail of what specifically that funding will be spent on, but it was actually a requirement as part of taking the Better Off funding, that part of it would be utilised with iwi and to increase iwi capability and their resourcing ability.
Through the chair, perhaps I could provide a couple of comments on that. Some of the programs that are operating across the region are things like the regional spatial plan, future development strategy, those sorts of things. They require across, particularly Hastings and Napier, engagement in terms of the legislation, engagement with iwi, and iwi are expected to be able to participate in those processes, but they are not resourced in a technical sense to participate. And so what this funding might be able to do is provide a bit of an engine room for iwi to be able to engage meaningfully with us as we develop those things. And instead of it being, via the board, if you like, they actually have people that can do work and provide technical advice on their behalf into those processes. So it's got some way to go, as the Mayor said, in terms of how that works in evolution, but it is basically going to be replicated by Hastings as well, who are also seeking this kind of funding from the Better Off Fund. And the idea is that it's really to provide some capability for meaningful engagement on those processes, which we are by law having to engage with anyway.
Yeah. So just to clarify, have I kind of got it right that it'll be to remunerate for time that we're asking for and to potentially fund consultants, but we don't know? Is that the sort of thing? Is it?
So some of the other iwi around the country have kind of like resource units made up of planning advice, engineering advice that work for iwi authorities. That's one option, but as it's still, and it's very much in its infancy, and to be fair, iwi themselves haven't quite worked out exactly how they would like to do that, but there has been quite a lot of talk about this behind the scenes at a regional level for iwi as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So my question is one of bemusement, really. We were asked as councillors to put up proposals that meet the criteria of this fund. Many of those proposals which were to have activities or projects delivered within our communities, and that was part of the priority or part of the meeting the constraints of the fund. Does this change meet that criteria, or should we in fact be going back to the list of proposals we put up and said, is there a $200,000 project that would actually provide greater benefit within our community rather than the proposed change here?
I think I can make an initial comment on that from the perspective that my recollection of the conversation and debate on the day that we originally had this on our agenda was that a number of elected members felt that $500,000 may not be an adequate amount for this particular part of the Better Off funding. And we did have a conversation about how much Hastings was intending to spend and whether we needed to ensure that we were aligning our commitment to this to theirs, which I'll allow Richard to speak a little bit further to that.
Through you. It wasn't a perfect science in terms of that. So Hastings were indicating that they were going to put $1 million into that into that part of the allocation. And you will recall that we were originally thinking 500,000 was appropriate based that we had a smaller land area, and I think the real, is there any real science behind that? No, there is not. It is still an estimate of contribution, with the idea being that the two councils would work together to provide some good infrastructure funding for that iwi capability. What I would say is that the overall Better Off funding allocation for Hastings is around 9 million, which is a bit more than what has been allocated to us. But perhaps from 500 to 700 fits quite nicely into that kind of proportional allocation of Better Off funding.
Through you, Madam Chair, my point being, councillors came up with some reasonably finite activities. What you're describing here is uncertainty about how that funding will be used. That's why I'm a little bit interested as to how we've reached this decision, that we don't have a clarity around how that $200,000 will be used in this proposal, whereas previously councillors have put up a considerable list of items that could have immediate delivery within the district.
Yes, through the Chair, I think you'll see in the recommendation too that the funding allocation is in principle. So I think it is putting up something at quite short notice into that does meet the funding criteria. We've put forward some ideas, and I think the council's worked really well at identifying things that were of interest to the community, and we've done our best to get a good mix in there. But it was always within principle. The full costing of those things, I don't think was refined at this stage to a finite degree. So in my mind, from a technical point of view, there is some flexibility in what you were doing. And what I would say is that we always signalled that there needed to be, as much as we could get, our mana whenua involved in working with us for that, for the benefit of that Better Off funding. And so I guess we're putting that on the table. They've given us some feedback on that, and from a technical point of view, from the council officer's point of view, that what they've asked for can fit with subject to the approval of the elected members.
And I guess that's the key well, why this has come to us is because this is the feedback we've received directly from mana whenua after going to them and asking them to share with us their thoughts on the list that had been pulled together. So that's why it was important to bring it to the table today. Councillor Crystal.
So this is obviously better off funding one-off, 700,000 for iwi capability. What happens when that money's used up? Well, where is it going to come from then to keep up this capability?
Second tranche.
The concept how it might land is that if currently when we have things like resource consents that require iwi approval, our iwi partners don't really have planners and those sorts of things to be able to deliver on those things. So what we think might happen into the future is that once there is a sort of maybe a collective capability, that there is a revenue source via that kind of a thing where parties that need mana whenua approval, they pay for that, and that provides an ongoing source. And I would imagine that that's one off I can think of immediately. But what is really hard for them to do is to get that start off, to get it going. And really this is what this is about. And it's kind of getting something that, because otherwise we end up with a real difficulty asking iwi to meaningfully participate in these things, and they've got no resources really to do that. So broadly, that's one option for ongoing work, but we would also imagine that as things are rolled out in the new legislation, for the Resource Management Act particularly, that there will be funding arrangements associated with because iwi engagement is very high in those new processes, and probably in the local government reforms too. So I think that will be sorted out over time in terms of being able to operationally fund that capability.
And in addition to that, the tranche 2 funding of Three Waters reform is quite specific in the need to actually continue and have full engagement with mana whenua. So should that happen, that's another possibility for funding the ongoing.
So just another question. So as part of the, this iwi capability, is it upskilling iwi to be able to do it? Because that's a really positive thing to get their own people doing the planning and stuff rather than bringing in consultants.
That's a great question. I think that it's a bit of both, and ideally it would be, those professionals would be within the mana whenua groups, but that's unlikely. It's hard enough to get planners and things full stop, let alone within that. But most of the other places around the country have developed a sort of a bit of both within that, and slowly over time capability improves. Yeah.
Councillor Bogue.
I understand that we have to provide evidence that we have consulted with mana whenua in this application for this funding. So if we consult with mana whenua and they make a recommendation to us, if we go back and say, no, we're not going to do it, I had this feeling that they've kind of got to sign off or agree to what we're asking the funding for. To me, it seems quite reasonable, but I would like to think that the application we send in has the blessing of mana whenua, and this is the opportunity to do that.
So yes, the funding is contingent on mana whenua engagement, and I don't know if it goes so far as to say actual formal sign-off, but I think it would be something that would be taken into consideration by DIA when they're signing off the funding agreement.
Thank you.
Sorry, through you, Your Worship.
Worship, I'm just wondering if I can add there, we're absolutely stoked that we've had the feedback from Manawatu. We think it's a really good signal to us that our partnership is beginning to form.
Okay, so we'll just put that one to the side for the moment, and the other matter that I wanted to bring up to potentially have a slight amendment to the committee resolution is that you may recall some time ago the Communities for Local Democracy group had sought legal advice about making some amendments to the funding agreement. And in a meeting update that I was involved with last week with the Communities for Local Democracy, it was confirmed that a number of councils have included those amendments in their funding agreement, have lodged them, and have not received any feedback that their agreement would not be signed off. So I would just like to propose that we actually review our position on the funding agreement itself. We do have written confirmation from the DIA in line with what those amendments address. For example, the fact that signing this agreement does not prohibit our ability to continue publicly opposing the reforms. But the legal advice is that to strengthen this, we should include these amendments to the funding agreement itself. I have just this morning, sorry, that's why I haven't circulated it, just confirmed with Wairoa what they are doing. So I'd like to include in the resolution that we do just delegate to the Mayor and Acting Chief Executive, and this is quite operational, but I think it's important we include it as part of the resolution, to review the Communities for Local Democracy funding agreement amendments with a view to including them in the funding agreement before we sign it to forward to the DIA. And we will ensure that all the information is shared with councillors so that you have confidence in what the final decision is by myself and the Acting Chief Executive. Any questions in relation to
What is it that they're including?
It is essentially just that I shall open. It has been circulated previously to all elected members. It was a little while ago. But to summarise it very much is just, and the wording's been done and everything, so it would just be a case of doing a cut and paste. Instead of the current funding agreement includes wording around Communities for Local Democracy membership and activities are permitted, and we're saying to change, the advice has been to change that to acknowledged, and that it does not amount to a conflict of interest for the purposes of the funding agreement. That's pretty much it, really. It's just around that we have the ability to continue to publicly oppose as a council without it leading to us being in breach of the funding agreement, and wording around that.
Yep.
Okay, so the two additions then that I would be proposing to go on here is that we have currently the committee's resolution is that A, we note that as part of central government's Three Waters reforms, it has made available tranche 1 Better Off funding to invest in the future of local government, urban development and the wellbeing of their communities. B, resolves that Napier City Council applies to this fund to direct in principle towards the projects, including the minor amendments as set out in option B below. I'm proposing we add a C, that we resolve to transfer the 200,000 for the regional park master plan to increase iwi capability to 700,000. Just give Anna an opportunity to master plan to increase iwi capability to 700. And D, delegate authority to the Mayor and Acting Chief Executive to review and just do C4LD. Funding agreement amendments. For inclusion in the signed agreement. Yeah, if we could pop that up on the screen. Everyone, I mean, I'll be I'm happy to move from the chair. Is everybody happy with the wording of those two additions? We could change it for potential inclusion in the signed agreement, in case anyone feels that D in its current wording actually commits us to including those amendments, whereas my intention at this stage is actually just to have the opportunity to include them should we decide that that's the best pathway forward.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, I'm happy to move that from the chair. We have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Brown. I don't really have anything to add other than to say, obviously, this has been an interesting process to work through. We don't often get handed funding from central government on a platter. Not that it's exactly on a platter, but I think, you know, as long as we can be confident that accepting this funding is not going to inhibit our ability to continue to engage with our community and with central government on our views, then it would be remiss of us not to actually utilise this funding for the benefit of our community. So I think we've arrived at a good plan in principle of what it will be used for, and that's why I'm happy to move the motion today. Councillor Brown.
Not much to add, just I think it's a great move to be able to support and strengthen mana whenua in an increased capacity. So.
Thank you. Councillor Crown.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also speaking in support. I just want to reiterate, though, that by shifting that funding and to the 700, making it a $700,000 value, doesn't mean that's an open checkbook. You know, there are obviously processes and checks and balances that we have, or that governors will have, to be able to understand how that money is going to be invested. I think that we can all think of times in this triennium where we have desperately wanted mana whenua feedback and input to help inform our decisions, and they have not been able to provide that. So anything that helps to be able to increase their capability to be able to respond when we need them to. And I think it's quite ironic that that expectation is actually set. Whether we agree with it or not, it has been set by central government, and they're the ones providing the money for us to be able to make it happen a little easier. So yeah, I think it's a positive and actually quite an elegant solution.
Any further councillors wish to speak? I will put the motion then. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So moving on, there were no reports from the Audit and Risk Committee. It was cancelled. Reports from Ngā Manokanaka o Te Iwi held on the 12th of August, and there was one paper there being the Pukimoki Marae Reserve revocation update, which essentially was an update. We had asked that mana whenua engage and have a conversation themselves about the process that would be undertaken to transfer the land at Pukimoki Marae Reserve into a marae establishment, marae reservation, which was undertaken. So it was an update on that, and I'm happy to move that, sitting on that committee, and Councillor Price, thank you. Were there any questions actually? No?
There was, excuse me, Madam Mayor, I support it. There was quite a conversation about who would end up owning the marae land, because there were representatives there from mana whenua, from Waiahiki Marae, who felt that the land should be returned to them, and the Marae Trust want the land to return to them. However, it's our role, as it says in the paper, is just to oversee the revocation of that land from being a sports recreation reserve to have the capacity to become a marae reserve, and the decision about who it goes to will go to the Crown. It won't be us who have to make that decision. So it was an interesting conversation, but we will not be making that final decision and it'll be obviously the next council who decides about the revocation and goes through that process of publicly notifying and getting a response about that. So just to clarify a little bit, it was an interesting paper.
Thank you for that additional context, Councillor Bogue. And I guess just to confirm that the revocation process itself has been endorsed by the mana whenua parties involved and has been endorsed by Ngā Manokanaka. So that means that, yes, the incoming council can move forward, and also that change from sports and recreation to marae reservation land will require a subdivision, because it's not, it's just subdividing off the portion of land which actually Pukimoki Marae sits on. So, right, so no further questions. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And our final item on the open agenda is the reports under delegated authority, tenders let. Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Simpson and Councillor Mawson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And can I please have a mover and seconder to go into public excluded? Thank you, Councillor Brown and Councillor Simpson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. We